You know, one of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships, especially men, is being too predictable, always available, always responsive, always there. And while that sounds like it should be a good thing, and to an extent it is, it quickly becomes background noise. Think about it. When someone always replies instantly, always says yes, always shows up with the same energy, it stops being exciting. It stops being memorable. It becomes routine. And routine, for better or worse, rarely creates emotional impact. If you want to make a woman worry about you, not in a toxic way, but in a way that makes her realize your presence has weight, you've got to break the pattern. You need to introduce a little unpredictability. Now, I'm not talking about playing games or being manipulative. This isn't about ignoring texts to be petty or ghosting people for fun. That's childish. What I'm saying is you can't always be the guy who's immediately on call the moment she snaps her fingers, because if you're always there, you become easy to take for granted. People tend to value what's not always within reach. We desire what seems just slightly beyond our grasp. When you become too available, too predictable, too consistent in a flatline way, you remove the mystery. You remove the emotional fluctuation that creates attraction. Emotional contrast is what builds obsession. Think of it like music. If every note were the same, it wouldn't be a song. It would just be noise. It's the ups and downs, the highs and lows that make us feel something. So how do you do this practically? Simple shifts. Maybe you don't respond to her message right away. Maybe you say, "I can't talk right now, I've got something to handle," and actually have something to handle. Maybe you don't ask her out every weekend. Maybe she gets used to seeing you, and then one weekend, you're nowhere to be found. Not because you're sulking, not because you're trying to punish her, but because your life is full, because you've got stuff going on, because your world doesn't revolve around her. And here's the twist. When you pull back just a little, when you deviate from the pattern without explanation, that's when her mind starts racing. Wait, is he okay? What's he doing? Why hasn't he called me yet? That's when she starts worrying, and when she starts worrying, she starts caring in a deeper way. Because the brain fills in blanks. When you're not around, she'll notice the silence, and in that silence, the emotional tension builds. That emotional tension, that's what separates men she forgets from men she obsesses over. But you have to be intentional. This isn't about disappearing for days and then coming back like nothing happened. That's immature. You're not trying to make her anxious. You're trying to make her realize your presence is something she notices when it's gone. Your absence should say as much as your presence. That's power. The truth is, it's not about making her chase you. It's about showing her that you have a life that doesn't orbit her. And that little shift, that subtle unpredictability, it creates space for her to step in, to wonder, to reach. And in that reaching, she begins to invest emotionally. Because people don't worry about what they're sure of. They worry about what they could lose. So if you want her to worry about you, stop being so easy to predict. Let her miss you. Let her wonder. Let her think twice before assuming you'll always be around. Let your silence speak. One of the most powerful moves a man can make is to start improving himself, quietly. No announcements, no status updates, no watch me now posts. Just you, in your own lane, doing the work. There's something incredibly attractive about a man who levels up without needing applause. He's not performing, he's not proving, he's evolving. And when you evolve without making noise about it, trust me, people notice, especially women. See, here's what most guys do. They hit the gym for 2 weeks, take a few mirror selfies, and flood their Instagram stories with motivational quotes and protein shakes. Or they start learning a new skill. And the next thing you know, every conversation they have is about how they're working on something big. But here's the thing. When you have to constantly announce your growth, it dilutes the impact. It looks like you're chasing validation, not transformation. Now imagine the opposite. You're just doing your thing, hitting the gym, reading, stacking skills, building your finances, investing in your peace, and you don't say a word about it. You just show up, better than before, stronger, sharper, more composed. And one day, she sees you and thinks, wait, something's different. That moment of realization hits harder than any post or speech you could have made. Why? Because the shift speaks for itself. And when a woman senses you're growing, but doesn't know exactly how or why, it triggers curiosity. And that curiosity quickly turns into concern. She starts wondering, who's influencing him now? Where's he going with all this? Is there someone new in his life pushing him like this? And whether she says it out loud or not, the worry creeps in. Because deep down, she knows that men who grow eventually outgrow. When a man starts upgrading his mindset, his health, his money, his boundaries, without looking back, he sends a silent but powerful message. I'm not the same guy you used to know. And that message? It shakes her. Especially if she didn't expect it. Especially if she thought she had you all figured out. Because now you've added mystery to the equation. You've added movement to what she thought was still. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you focus on yourself quietly, it forces her to observe without access. She doesn't get the play-by-play anymore. You're not updating her every step of the way. She's not in the loop. And that space, that silence, makes her worry. She starts filling in the blanks. Is he doing this for someone else? Did something change? Did he change? The more questions she has, the more invested she becomes in finding the answers. This isn't about revenge. It's not about making her jealous. It's about recentering your focus so intensely on your own life that your glow-up becomes undeniable. And not just in appearance. I'm talking about your presence, your energy, your ambition, your ability to walk away from anything that no longer fits the man you're becoming. The most attractive men are the ones who don't chase attention. They attract it. And nothing attracts more than a man becoming a better version of himself in silence. It sends a signal. If you don't keep up, you'll get left behind. That's when the worry sets in. Because now, she's not sure you'll still be standing where she left you. And that uncertainty, that's powerful. So the next time you feel the urge to show off your progress or prove a point, pause. Let the results. Let her notice. Let her wonder. You ever meet someone who just lays everything out on the table in the first conversation, tells you their whole life story, their dreams, their traumas, their favorite color, what they had for breakfast, and what their ex did to them in 2017, all before you've even finished your drink? Now, don't get me wrong, openness is important. Vulnerability has its place, but when it comes to attraction, especially lasting emotional impact, there's one element that gets overlooked far too often: mystery. Mystery keeps people thinking about you when you're not around. It keeps conversations replaying in their head. It creates that little itch in the back of their mind that says, I want to know more. And when it comes to women, if you want her to worry about you, even just a little, it's not about being loud. It's about being unreadable. The truth is, most guys are so eager to be liked, to be accepted, that they overshare way too soon. They give away all their depth like it's on clearance. They forget that attraction doesn't just come from connection. It comes from tension, from curiosity, from not knowing exactly what the other person is thinking or feeling all the time. When you're mysterious, you become an unsolved puzzle. And puzzles get attention. Puzzles demand energy because our brains hate unanswered questions. So what does that look like in real life? It's simple. You don't need to be cold or closed off. You just need to hold something back. You don't have to tell her everything about your past. You don't need to explain your every move, every emotion, every decision. If she asks, "What are you thinking?" maybe you just smile and say, "You'll figure it out." That's enough. It plants a seed. It makes her wonder. If you always give complete clarity, she'll stop being curious. And the moment curiosity dies, so does the chase. Mystery isn't about being deceptive. It's about being layered. Let her peel back one layer, then another, then another. Don't give her the whole picture in one sitting. The most captivating men are the ones who reveal themselves slowly, who let people earn their story. Because when you give someone something to earn, they value it more. And let me say this, women talk, they observe, they analyze. If you're always emotionally available, always telling her everything you're doing, feeling, thinking, she'll figure you out. And once she figures you out completely, she stops wondering. And once she stops wondering, she stops worrying. That's the power of mystery. It lingers. It makes your silence loud. It turns a 3-word text into a novel in her mind. Why did he say it like that? Is he upset? Is he seeing someone? What's he really thinking? That's the kind of energy that keeps her emotionally tied in, even when you're not around. When a woman doesn't know exactly where she stands with you, but she knows she wants to matter to you, that tension creates emotional investment. She starts imagining versions of you in her head, some real, some exaggerated, but that's what keeps her thinking. That's what makes her worry. Not because you're toxic or manipulative, but because you're not easy to categorize. You're not easy to own. So stop giving people your entire playbook in the first chapter. Let them sit with the unknown for a bit. Let them earn access to who you really are. Because mystery doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you've got more than what meets the eye. Let her wonder, because wondering is what keeps her wanting. You know what makes someone truly magnetic? It's when you can feel that they don't need you, but they choose you. There's a huge difference, and women can sense it. When you give off the energy that you've got options, that your world isn't collapsing without her, it changes the entire dynamic. A lot of men fall into the trap of being too eager, too available. They make it too obvious that they're emotionally dependent on the woman they're into. And at first that might seem sweet or romantic, but over time, it starts to feel heavy. It starts to feel like pressure. Because now the woman feels like she's your only source of validation. And the moment that happens, something shifts. That emotional pull she once felt, it starts to fade. But when you're selectively detached, when you make it clear, not through words, but through how you live, that you've got options, you've got a full life, and you're not clinging to her approval, that's when she starts to take notice. That's when the worry kicks in. And listen, this isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not about acting cold or indifferent just to get a reaction. It's about operating from a place of self-worth. When a man knows who he is and knows what he brings to the table, he doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his value. And because of that quiet confidence, people naturally lean in. Think about it. When you're not desperate for her time or attention, when you're not always the one initiating, when you're okay with space and silence, that unsettles her in the best possible way. She's used to men who orbit her. Now she's dealing with one who's in his own orbit, and she's not sure how to read it. Suddenly she starts asking herself questions she never had to ask before. Why didn't he call today? Is he seeing someone else? Has something changed? She becomes more alert, more emotionally involved. And it's not because you're playing games. It's because she's realizing she might not have the same grip on you that she thought she did. The irony is, the less you chase, the more they notice. The less you over-explain, the more they wonder. You're no longer positioned as someone who's just lucky to be in her life. You're someone whose presence is a privilege. And when she sees that other women might recognize that too, when she sees that you could give your time and energy elsewhere, that's when she starts worrying. But here's the key. You've got to actually have option. This isn't about faking interest from others or trying to make her jealous on purpose. That backfires. Real options come from being the kind of man who's constantly growing, constantly expanding. The man who knows that love is great, but his purpose, his mission, his peace come first. When a woman senses that your life is full, with or without her, it creates healthy tension. It reminds her you're not waiting on her to feel complete. Let me tell you something. A man who is okay being alone, who is not afraid to walk away, who isn't glued to any one outcome, that man is dangerous in the most attractive way, because he's not emotionally dependent on anyone to feel like he matters. And that independence, that freedom, that's what keeps her up at night. That's what makes her worry. Don't be the man who tries to prove his worth by clinging tighter. Be the one who lets go, just enough to remind her that staying with you is a choice, not a given. If you want to create emotional impact, if you want to live rent-free in someone's mind, you have to learn how to create contrast. Emotional contrast. That's what keeps people hooked. It's what keeps them thinking about you long after you've left the room. Because truthfully, if someone always gives the same emotional energy, whether it's always warm or always cold, it becomes predictable. And predictable becomes forgettable. Think about it like this. The sun feels nice on your skin, but if it never sets, if there's never any shade, it gets overwhelming. People need that balance. And women, especially women who are emotionally tuned in, they feel shifts. They sense changes. So when you can go from deeply present and warm to cool and distant without losing your calm, you create a kind of emotional rhythm that's hard to walk away from. Now, I'm not talking about mood swings or playing games. This isn't about being hot one day and cruel the next. It's about emotional range. Most guys think consistency means being one-dimensional, always agreeable, always sweet, always reassuring. But real consistency is about being grounded while still letting your energy flow based on your mood, your focus, your time. It's about knowing when to lean in and when to step back. Let's say you're with her, fully engaged. You're laughing, present, vibing. Then the next day, you're quieter, focused on your goals, maybe less available. You didn't do anything wrong. You're just not flooding her with the same warmth 24/7. That's emotional contrast. And that's what makes her think, wait, did I do something? Is he pulling away? Not because you're trying to make her insecure, but because your energy has depth. You're not flat, you have layers. And those shifts, they spark tension. That tension is what keeps her emotionally engaged. Because now, every interaction with you carries weight. She's not sure if she has you all figured out. She's not sure what the next version of you is going to feel like. It's exciting. It's real. And honestly, it makes her nervous. In a good way. She starts watching your mood, your tone. She tries to decode the silence. That's emotional impact. That's when she starts worrying, not because you're being cruel, but because you've become harder to read. Most men are afraid to pull back because they think they'll lose her. But the truth is, if you're always on, always emotionally available, always pouring yourself out, she doesn't have to work to feel you anymore. And when she doesn't have to work for it, she stops appreciating it. Emotional presence loses its value when there's no contrast. Now here's the powerful part. When you create contrast without creating chaos, she'll chase your balance. She'll crave the warmth, but she'll also fear the cold. Not in a fearful way, but in a what if I lose this kind of way. And that's where emotional investment really starts to grow. Not in the comfort, but in the uncertainty. That edge. That subtle sense that she's not completely in control of the connection. That doesn't mean you become emotionally unavailable. No, you stay present. You stay solid, but you're not afraid to create emotional distance when needed. You're not afraid to let her feel the absence of your energy. And in that space, she begins to realize how much she values your presence. It's the men who understand emotional rhythm that women remember. Because those men don't just show up and give, they know when to pull back and let the silence speak. And when your silence carries just as much weight as your words, you become unforgettable. Don't just give her comfort, give her contrast. Because contrast is what makes her care. Let's be honest, most people only value what they feel they can lose. And that's why the ability to walk away is one of the most powerful traits you can ever develop. Not just in relationships, but in life. It shifts the energy completely. Because when a woman senses that you're willing to walk away if your peace, your standards, or your worth are compromised, it makes her sit up a little straighter. It forces her to think twice. Suddenly, you're not just another guy hoping to be chosen. You're the man who knows how to choose himself. You see, the problem is too many men fear walking away. They get emotionally tied up in the hope of what could be instead of standing firm in what is. So they tolerate bad behavior, they shrink their boundaries, they ignore red flags, all in the name of love or keeping her happy. But in doing so, they lose the very thing that makes them attractive in the first place, their backbone. When a man has the strength to walk away, not out of anger, not to prove a point, but out of pure self-respect, he changes the power dynamic. He's no longer playing from a place of desperation. He's playing from a place of wholeness. And women can feel that. They might not admit it right away, but deep down, it triggers something. It makes them worry, because now they know that keeping you isn't automatic. It's earned. Let's be real. Emotional detachment isn't about being heartless. It's about knowing that no matter how much you care for someone, you won't abandon yourself to keep them. That kind of energy is rare. That kind of energy is unforgettable. And when a woman realizes she can't just pull emotional strings and expect you to stay on command, it shakes her. Especially if she's used to being the one in control. But here's the trick. For your ability to walk away, to actually mean something, it has to be real, not performative, not something you threaten her with just to manipulate her into giving you what you want. That's not strength, that's insecurity wearing a mask. Real power is when you walk away quietly. No drama, no begging, no parting speeches, just clarity, just boundaries, just peace. And guess what happens when you do that? She starts questioning everything. Why isn't he trying harder? Why didn't he fight for me? Is he already over it? And that worry? That's not cruelty. It's a consequence, a natural reaction to losing something valuable. Because now she's confronted with the fact that maybe, just maybe, she took you for granted. That she thought you'd always be there. That she never imagined you'd actually leave. And that's when she starts to realize losing you hurts. Because men who are willing to walk away aren't easy to replace. They don't come around every day. They're not emotionally fragile or easily manipulated. They're centered, they're grounded, and they move like they know their worth. Because they do. So if you're in a situation where your presence is being overlooked, your effort taken for granted, your energy drained, don't threaten to leave. Don't try to make her understand. Just go. And let your absence be the lesson your words could never teach. Because at the end of the day, a man who isn't afraid to lose her is the one she'll worry most about